Hey kids, this is Aaron from the podcast That Wouldn't Die, and Kevin and I use Zencastr. You think you're better than us, that you're using something else? You're wrong. Zencastr's the place to be. Who are you to deny it?
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. If you thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code DIEHARD and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same experiences we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time for you to share your story.
Only a fool will give up a chance for a 30% discount.
You got 5 seconds to tell me where you buried the loot.
Oh man, it's great. They got film reviews, recommendations, special guest games.
Where's the loot?
Hey, calm down. It's there on Spotify and Google Podcast. I mean, it's easy. The Movie Loot. Check it out.
Government agents, scientists, soldiers, master criminals, secret formulas, monsters and midgets. None of them belong in this swamp. Only one thing does. The Swamp Thing.
Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast That Wouldn't Die. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, as always, is Aaron.
Hello there.
This week on the podcast, we're discussing the science fiction horror classic Swamp Thing, directed by Wes Craven, starring Louis Jourdan and Adrienne Barbeau, and others, I guess. Good grief.
All right, but back to our original conversation.
Well, I'm not done even introducing the thing yet.
Is there more to say?
Each week on the podcast That Wouldn't Die, we discuss guilty pleasures and forgotten classics of the horror and sci-fi genre with its comedic twist. Go ahead, Aaron. Let me have
All
it.
right. Viewers, we were discussing what to watch next, and I listed a couple of movies that I had never seen. One was The Descent, and so Kevin was telling me that he's traumatized because he has claustrophobia. And then we're discussing that dude. What was the name of the canyon?
Like the Nutty Putty Hole or something like that.
Oh, the dude that got lost and just kept wedging himself until he was upside down, and then they couldn't rescue him, and then he perished, and they sealed him in there. I was like, that is the most horrific thing I've ever heard of. And now your ghost is locked into the place where you suffered your most trauma. That is the worst. I said, chop me up in little pieces, pull me out, and sprinkle me in the ocean. I'd rather come out in pieces. I mean, after I'm dead, of course.
Hey, do it while you're living.
Dude,
That's real
I mean, that guy who got cut off his arm, he wasn't like, well, I guess I'll just live here until I don't live anymore. But I mean, the dude was dead. Get him out of there.
Well, it's
seems
funny.
like it's easier if you're not concerned about their safety to remove them.
That's true. Then
Did
you
you
just
put
start snapping
oil in
things.
there or something? I mean, take it out in pieces, but don't leave me in there. But first of all, the idea of exploring caves, I mean, walking, yes, standing up, maybe I duck slightly.
Right.
But I'm not on hands and knees forcing myself through tight spaces. And those boys who do it are usually pretty trim to begin with. I don't get that. I
Well-
don't get that. Can't you jump out of a plane or something?
here's the thing. I never thought of myself as claustrophobic. And then I saw The Descent, which I'm sure we'll do at some point.
Just
And
not
there's the
this week.
scene where they're kind of squeezing through there, and it was my heart started beating like a trip hammer. I was just like, whoa, just the idea of this. Because people who don't know us in real life, we're tall. We're not, little hobbits roaming around the Shire. Okay. So
That would explain our fear of heights. We have farther to fall.
100%. So yes, the idea, right. Frankly, I mean, I went to the catacombs when I was in Paris, and I don't remember that bothering
That
me
was
too
easy.
much. Right, but it's
You walk
underground.
like a normal person. We weren't
Right.
like on our bellies with the corpses of 1,000 dead Parisians, grabbing at us like it's poltergeist.
Pretty
They're
much.
all stacked very nicely off to the side.
Well, here's the thing. Phobias are irrational fears. I feel like, if I'm in a tight space, that's a reasonable fear. That's reasonable,
Exactly.
right? I'm
I
not
mean,
afraid. If
When
I'm in
your
the
body
closet,
says,
right.
I can't even move through this crack. I'll just push a little harder. No. Something in your brain ain't working that says danger.
Danger. Like I was saying, if I go in the closet and close the door, I'm not like racked with, anything. It's not that movie. Oh God. Oh shoot. Body Double. Remember Body Double? The guy was claustrophobic, like legitimately claustrophobic, where it was like he'd walk like underneath a tunnel or underneath like a walking path. There's a little tunnel big enough that people could drive a car through. He's still going like, oh, I'm overcome by my fear. That's not me. I'm perfectly fine with that. But spelunking, no thanks.
With
I'm out.
demons, spelunking and with demons.
Definitely. I mean, that makes it worse. Obviously, if you're stuck in a cave and there's a demon running around. But I don't even need the demon. Being stuck in a cave is enough. Is enough for me. Sweet Jesus.
It's all bad. Unless it's owned by a park system with lights and paved ways.
And a docent. I need a ranger or something to walk with me with my
A
hand.
70-year-old man telling me it's safe. That's what I need.
Is that too much to ask?
But back to my original fear was I was going to fall into a crevasse and die in a glacier. And then I went to Iceland and had to hike on a glacier. And I was like, at first I was like, this is a beginner hike. So I was like, oh, it'll just be level. It'll be like I'm walking on ice. But then they brought the crampons out and an ice axe. I was like, that's all coming true. I should have listened. The spirits were sending me messages. And really, I just walked like 20 feet with the elderly people, and the youngsters ran off over a hill on the glacier. But every time I saw a crack or a hole, I'm like,
is it legitimately called a crampon, or are you just making stuff up? That sounds weird to me.
It's literally called a crampon. It's the thing you put on your boots that has the spikes to grip onto the ice.
I see. Interesting.
It's strapped on. It's like those old-timey roller skates like you saw on TV that clamped on your shoe. It's kind of like that.
It's kind of like that. Any other thoughts about your bizarre fears of crevasses before we move on with our lives?
I'm figuring, since I didn't go too far on the glacier, that's why I'm here. If I had gone over the hill, that would have been it. We would not be here today.
That would be the end of the story. That
would have been
R.I.P.
Like, our dead relatives were like, we sent you that fucking message and you didn't listen.
You didn't get it. You missed out on.
You get what you get, and now you don't throw a fit. Now that you're just gonna die in a crack in the ice.
Why don't you give us your 30-second synopsis?
And just to add terror to it, they made us put on those belt straps that go around your legs with a hook. So when you do fall into a crevasse,
people with you,
they can drag. We weren't hooked up yet, but they can shimmy up and yank you out of the crevasse.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a positive. That's a safety
Seeing
measure.
all that equipment didn't feel like a good thing. So now we're going to talk about the lonesome death of Jordy Verrill.
Yep.
But this time it is taking place in some kind of Mississippi swamp or Florida swamp or whatever.
Are there swamps in Mississippi? Maybe there are. I don't know. Could be.
I don't even know. What's a swamp? What's the difference between a swamp and a bog? Is one just hot and one's cold?
What's a marsh? What's a wetland? Are they different? Are they all the same?
Land that's wet is a wetland?
Could be. Could be.
say.
I'm not a scientist.
We're from the desert. This is all way too complex.
I know. So give us your 30-second synopsis of Swamp Thing.
A bunch of nonsense about people, scientists, experimenting on, I don't know, growing plants out of wooden planks, except a Bond villain arrives and wants to steal the secret formula for world domination. Nonsense. Adrienne Barbeau's boobuses, which fascinate me because when she's not wearing a bra, her breasts seem normal. But when she is wearing a bra, then she's wearing some 1960 like bullet bra, where like you're like, holy shit.
Well, they're real, so they hang down to her knees, basically.
But she's wearing like a tank. I mean, they're not. At one point, she is topless swimming, and I saw her boobuses.
You see the slightest hint of a nipple if you're looking close.
I was looking close because I was
as was I. Yeah.
I don't remember her ever seeing her nipple because at first I was like, oh, okay, so they're doing the wet T-shirt on her. Oh, okay, I didn't see very much. And the next thing I know, she's naked as a jaybird, swimming in the swamp with the piranha and the crocodilios and the gators and God knows what. The little fish that swim up your urethra. Who knows?
Those are real. Don't mess with
Those
them.
are real.
Don't
Everything I mentioned is real.
Do you have a phobia of those?
This is not like cryptozoology.
Sweet Jesus. Now,
so she
Okay,
abandons her 3-day-old lover because he's a hideous freak, and life goes on.
I'm assuming you'd seen this before. Is that correct?
I saw this 1,001 years ago, and I remember liking it much more. But I don't think I knew it was like a comic. But now watching it, it's like some clearly early comic Marvel Universe nonsense. I'm sure they're going to redo it with what's his name from who's your favorite guy?
I don't know, Vin Diesel, The Rock.
Vin Diesel and The Rock are your two favorite guys.
They're my favorite, and Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds will do a remake of this.
He'll be the Swamp Man.
And he will be the Swamp Man, and he'll be cracking jokes, even though he has no swamp penis or a swamp anus, because I also look very hard there.
They have a cloaca, I think, the swamp people. Oh, sweet Jesus.
But who will, in my recasting, in my reimagining, who will be the new Adrienne Barbeau? Because she's like 40 here. Louis Jardin is like 60.
I can see that. I can see this is not young Adrienne Barbeau. She's got a few
Although
years on
she
her.
looks exactly the same. Young
She does.
Adrienne Barbeau, old Adrienne Barbeau. It's the hair.
Oh, she's got a bigger afro than Dr. J, is what I always say when I see this movie. It is she's a beautiful woman.
Curls.
She's a beautiful woman, but I don't feel like this movie does much for her in terms of the way they present her. She's wearing like Tom Selleck's like Hawaiian shirt from Magnum PI, and
I mean, she is trim, and we know that because her skin is her clothing is painted on, except for like a blouse.
This movie is so bizarre. I remember it.
And still back to who is going to play Adrienne Barbeau in my reimagining.
I don't know, Sydney Sweeney or somebody. How about that?
Who the is that?
Exactly. It's important to see movies that are not horror movies from time to time.
Dude, I got it. remember in the Barbie movie, like the melted Barbie? That
Are
would
you
be
talking
Adrienne
Kate
Barbeau.
McKinnon? She's not.
Kate McKinnon.
That's quite a step in a different direction from Adrienne Barbeau to Kate McKinnon.
Adrienne
Interesting.
Barbeau looks like she chews tobacco and spits in this.
She
She's
does.
just one drink away from her character in Creepshow.
She absolutely is. She absolutely. When we were
Absolutely is.
When we were talking to our buddies over at what was it, the Film Effect Pod,
Right.
about how when I see Creepshow and I see Adrienne Barbeau, I figure that's how she is in real life.
Yeah.
And he said, no, she's very nice. Evidently, he met her. And
I think she's not nice, but it's the same character as Maud and everything she does. I assume this is a Costner effect.
She's kind of right. She comes across as, I don't want to say rough, but just kind of sharp
rough,
edges.
bold.
Sharp edges.
Bold. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
I can't imagine that I go to her house for tea and she's wearing a flouncy dress and she whispers to me the whole time.
No, not at all.
So
Not
he's
at all.
infatuated from his meet and greet where he met her.
Well, she can still be very friendly and, courteous and blah, blah, blah.
Hello. She's like Delta Burke when you meet her in person. Yeah.
Does that mean something? That Delta Burke from Designing Women?
Like,
what does
no,
that mean?
That like she has like this accent like Delta Burke and all that.
Interesting. Interesting.
And I just being sassy, they met her at a meet and greet because I guess he interviewed her.
He said he interviewed her, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm just being sassy.
How dare you? But I remember as a child, I felt like I saw this 100 times. I don't know if it was on HBO when I was back in 82.
It was on the movie channel where they only had 4 movies, so it was a constant loop. Whenever you turn it on, it'd be the same damn movie.
Right. I mean, I felt like I'd seen it 1,000 times, honestly. I mean, some of the scenes, I feel like I could quote them.
I do not feel that.
You don't? Well, like, I didn't remember how it began, like how he became Swamp Thing. But Swamp Thing, I remember word for word. So,
do you find it odd that she shows up wearing a heels, a skirt, suit, and there's like a dude with her who's like in a tuxedo, and then immediately changes into his flip flops or whatever? I was like, you know where you're going, right? Well, she was literally at one point running through the swamp in heels.
Yes, multiple times in heels, 6-inch spikes, walking through the swamp. That's not good. And it doesn't seem to work with Adrienne Barbeau's kind of thing. You think she's wearing like boots or kind of combat boots.
You don't think of her as like, you can't imagine Nicole Kidman running through this swamp cursing people out.
Right. But Adrienne Barbeau,
she's
check.
Yes. Of course she's feminine. She's just not hyper feminine.
Well, yes. But I don't want to define what femininity is supposed to be.
I will do it for you.
Okay.
I feel that clearly you're the new age man who's afraid to tell it like it is.
That's 100% what it is. Femininity has many different shades. That's
what I'm saying.
Why don't we jump right in to the craziness? Because
I was already half a page of notes.
Clearly, but it's funny. There's a weird, like, I don't know what, like a crawl that appears at the beginning where it's just like, one man came to the swamp to discover blah blah blah, and another man for evil. It's like, just start the story. What are we doing?
They should have done like a Creepshow kind of a thing because they wanted to do the comic book kind of idea, but they were just a little too soon. Because literally, even the villain has a crazy name like a Bond villain.
Arcane. It's Louis Jourdan.
Anton Arcane.
Yes.
Unless they're in Young and the Restless, there's nobody with that name except a Bond villain.
Well, and the thing about it is if you watch this movie, other than the subject matter, the only thing that tells you that it's like a comic book kind of thing is they have like these kind of wipes that go, you know what I mean? When they go from one scene to another, it's like, here's a vertical wipe, here's a horizontal wipe, letting you know.
Honestly, I think they should have doubled down on it. It would have
If you're
been
gonna do
much
it.
more entertaining.
Right. If you're going to do it, you might as well just do it.
Yeah.
But it's something. So the movie is there's some kind of bizarre research laboratory deep in the swamp. And I don't think they even tell us where the swamp takes place. It could be anywhere.
Meanwhile, there's a paramilitary group of Rapo Joes just cruising around, I don't know, killing anybody they find.
Right out of the gate. So she arrives and they're like, it's a good thing we're about to wrap up. And it's a government, like there's CIA agents everywhere, presumably. There's, guards and blah, blah, blah. Smash cut to there's like a team of mercenaries coming in out of the swamp who just wipe them out in 5 seconds. It's like, what are you guys doing? Aren't you a government installation? Clearly not. Very bizarre.
Why would it be a government installation? And what are they actually experimenting on? That they need to have a lab in the swamp?
They're little dodgy as to what their goals are. But
after the movie, I'm still a little unclear.
Very much unclear. Well, I think they said it's like create a formula that can combine plant and animal DNA or something along those lines.
It's called GMO food, baby.
That's what it is. Well, we meet Ray Wise. Ray Wise as Dr. Alec Holland. And it's his responsibility he's invented the formula that the government is sponsoring, and it is nonsense. It is crazy nonsense.
But they know it works because they spilled some on a plank and some moss grew out of it immediately. It was the lonesome death of Jordy Verrill.
Well,
go ahead.
They didn't just spill it. The sister, the other Dr. Holland, reached in with her bare hand into the glowing green formula and just splashed it on the floor. No gloves. I mean, this is a laboratory, isn't it? We're just splashing whatever the magical formula is all over the place. Is that
That's how we test it. And my question is, because we saw what happened later, why doesn't she have Jordy Verrill on her hand?
Because she's dead.
That shit grew immediately. Give me a break. You should have had fingers like the Grinch.
No, you're right.
Like Jim Carrey Grinch.
100%. She should have had some kind of crazy claw or something. Because multiple times people are exposed to this and turn into freaks. So she should have had like a weird Jimmy hand. Whoa, what happened? Right?
This whole thing doesn't fucking make any sense.
Yes.
So basically, and I'm killing dreams. I can feel it. I can feel the tears of 1,000 men.
No
all
question.
In the background going,
That's what you enjoy. So have at it.
The thing is, so we have the guy who's in charge. I don't know what his job is. The guy who's supposed to be leading this peels his face off to reveal himself as Louis Jardin, also known as Anton Arcane, billionaire madman who's here to steal the formula.
Correct.
And in the hustle and bustle, all the slop gets spilled on the good doctor, and there's an explosion. Next thing we know, he's the Swamp Thing.
Let's go. Let's take 2 steps back. Number one, we talked about they're splashing the formula around. I think the best thing to do is she reaches in and immediately goes, ah! I wanted that to happen, right?
Yes, of course.
That should have happened.
Because that would make sense. That
would make perfect sense. Now, Anton Arcane is the evil genius who's trying to steal the formula, and they kind of say later, everyone will kneel or they'll starve. So that it's world domination. It's the old story. But the idea that he's been there.
How does this make that happen? How does he make that happen on this formula?
I think they said it'll help like crops growing in the desert or something along those lines. Like that's the goal.
So you won't need water in the future? Is that
you will not need water?
That's what's keeping crops from growing in the desert.
Correct.
Is this like a rain dance or something? Is it the weather machine from General Hospital?
Was there a weather machine in General Hospital?
one of those soap operas had a weather machine.
Was that a thing? Maybe it is.
There was a real thing in the 80s.
But it
There's a
seemed
lot
like
of supernatural things going on in the soap operas back in the old days.
let me go back another step as well. What the hell was Adrienne Barbeau's job? Why was she here? She worked for the government.
She was like an engineer or something.
I don't
Wearing
maybe
her polyester lady boss suit.
right, her pantsuit. Or not pants, skirt suit.
Her
Right.
skirt suit.
No, it's I don't know what her purpose was. And the idea that Anton Arcane is wearing a disguise for months, for he's been
Months.
living a double life as this for
He
no
seems to be. No. They killed the other guy, and then he put on a mask. So maybe he did it earlier that
and who is he?
day.
Rich Little? He's got the voice ventriloquism.
He's a crazy billionaire. He's I don't know, Goldfinger, whatever. He's
Goldfinger. God. So he's trying to get the goddamn thing. So
Why did he even need to be there? You're
He
a
did.
billionaire.
I guess
Pick it up and bring it. So
Well-
he can say, "Aha, Blofeld."
that's exactly right. Well, I guess theoretically you could just bribe somebody, like have a turncoat that works in the laboratory. Then you don't have to murder the dude, wear his disguise, and affect his crazy accent for God knows how long. So
I have this crazy idea. What if you waited till they went to bed and then just went to the lab and took everything?
that's good. Well, because that's the thing. When they massacre everybody, blow up the laboratory, and steal the formula, no one seems to come looking, right? There isn't like an Apache helicopter showing up 12 hours later. We've lost contact. We're here to save the day. No.
But Adrienne Barbeau called the emergency number, but they routed it to the wrong person. They needed to go one level higher.
Correct. Basically she found the 7-Eleven in the middle of the swamp that had a phone, so that's good, and called the CIA or whatever. And you're right. They routed her to, it was supposed to be Ritter, the head of security, but we all know that was Louis Jourdan's
right.
secret identity. So,
And let's mention that she stopped at a 7-Eleven run by a 12-year-old boy, who then she put into extreme danger and basically gets him killed.
she gets him in a shocking turn.
It's shocking. I was very upset. I was
Yes.
very upset when he got killed. I was like, what?
Right? He was a 12-year-old boy. And you hear him go,
Oh my
Cable,
God.
and then you see the boat float by, and there he is, all slumped over dead. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, poor
Luckily,
baby.
Swamp Man can heal all wounds with a touch of his slimy hand. So that's good. Thank God for that.
Again, who knows what the hell they experiment on? Because then later on, Swamp Man explains that the formula doubles down or amplifies your basic being. So if you're grass, you're extra grassy. So his
Right.
basic being is an asshole-free eunuch that has to live in a swamp, but can heal people with this mossy chest hair. Is that
I want
right?
to be clear that we did not establish his excretory system. It's possible.
I looked. There was nothing there. He was smooth like a Ken doll.
Sweet, but you're right. It seemed kind of a convenient explanation, right? Because he got splashed. Well, here's the other thing, which makes it all the more bizarre that they're just dipping their hand into it, is that when they splash it, there's like a little bit of a spark. Splash, splash. So it's like nitroglycerin or something they're dipping in their hand in. Spark, spark. So when he falls, there's a huge explosion, and now he's totally on fire, and he jumps into the swamp and becomes swampy.
But he really is not impacted by the flames. It seems to be more based on what happens later on in the
Okay.
movie. It seems like he was immune to the fire.
Who's to
Because
say he's
the
a horrible
craft is
freak
all-
now?
He's a horrible freak, but fire doesn't make tubes appear all over you, except where you need one. And it doesn't
Clearly
also
not.
call lumps of moss to appear.
Well, you don't know if he was turning basically into a skeleton, and then in the swamp, then it kind of rebuilt him from swamp
Then it wouldn't
matter.
have just been more skelety? Because it makes you more of what you are.
It makes you more
and
of
a
what you
freak
already are.
slash also a freak.
And
So you can cure cancer and save lives, but you're a hideous freak who has to live in the swamps.
correct.
I call that a bad side effect. Are they working on a pill to mitigate that side effect?
If only. If only. There was a scene at the beginning that we just blew right by where the mercenaries kidnap this dude in the swamp. He was like, I don't know, walking the perimeter or whatever. They grab him. And the leader of the evil mercenaries pulls a snake out of his pocket. Literally, not out of a
That's where
bag.
you keep them.
It sounds like a euphemism. It is not a euphemism. He pulls a Bushmaster out of his pocket and then, I don't know, kind of touches the dude with the. Who wrote this? What kind of a crazy person wrote this?
First of all, and the mercenaries in the 80s movies were always like the bullies in Revenge of the Nerds. They're always
Correct.
a bunch of, they look like they're Schwarzenegger, whatever that war movie was, but with bandanas. But in reality, they're a bunch of knuckleheads.
Right. Well, there was Bruno, who was the fat bald mercenary, and his arc was kind of confusing. I guess we were supposed to think that he wasn't all bad to begin, because when the other mercenaries are like looting the corpses, he's like, I got a bunch of watches. There's a guy walking by. I took it out of their dead pockets. He takes the locket and kind of puts it on in like a little pine tree that's growing there to show, yes, I kill people, innocent people for money, but I'm still
loot, but I hang things from trees.
but I hang things because later, in a bizarre twist, when Arcane gets the formula, he slips it into Bruno's drink, and Bruno gets turned into a weird little troll, a goblin, if you will, a bizarre twist.
And the comment was he looks like a big man, but he's a small man inside.
Right. When Swamp Man goes, hey, it only makes you more of what you are. Arcane goes, oh, so Bruno, in Louis Jordan's voice, so Bruno. I was about to do
Is
an
that Louis
accent.
Jordan's
I'm not
voice?
going to. He was stupidity and timidity. Interesting. So I guess that's what we're supposed to think. That Bruno was an evil mercenary just because he didn't have strong enough character to say, "Hey guys, this is not the way we should be in our lives." He knew what was right and wrong, but he just went along with the bullies, I guess. Is what we're
Right.
supposed to think.
Well, I mean, that's what that's what Louis Jordan would want to go along with his thing. But what bothers me,
Please.
so now we have the formula, we have the books. The what's his name? Arcane, Anton Arcane.
Which
Sees what's
Acton?
I don't know.
An episode, go ahead.
Anton LaVey, whatever.
There it is.
He sees all these problems with the formula, but thinks, that won't happen to me. It'll just make me smarter. I won't look like a freak like everybody else. You are a billionaire. Why aren't you experimenting on more of your henchmen before you take a tipple for yourself?
Right, no, I definitely agree with that, because it wasn't like Alec Holland became like, I don't know, like a
Even
beautiful
more
Adonis.
handsome.
Right, exactly. He did not become the Greek god of love after taking the thing. He became a swamp man. So
A hideous freak.
He became
Again,
a hideous
everyone who
freak.
takes it becomes a hideous freak. And the person who shrank down actually became much nicer and showed them the way out.
Which also doesn't make any sense. Like, you think he should be more sniveling, right? Not just...
He's not sniveling at all.
No, he's brave, and yes.
Yeah.
That
doesn't make any fucking sense. So Louis
altruistic.
Jourdan decides to guzzle a bit of the gruel himself.
Correct.
And what does he become, Kevin?
Like some kind of a warthog creature, basically.
It was like half Power Ranger, half Warthog. It looked like a monster from either early Star Trek or Space 1999.
Absolutely.
When there was very limited special effects.
You could see this guy
paper.
fighting Godzilla, basically, is what it came down to. Smashing Tokyo. No question. Well, that was... So, Arcane slugs the green glowing stuff down the hatch, glug, glug, glug. And then he's sitting in his study. Again, this is the middle of a swamp. He has a huge plantation in the middle of the swamp. He's sitting there drinking his brandy. The woman comes in and he's got a jacked up hand, which makes her... he has a weird paw, an oozy paw that he doesn't notice he has. That makes the woman drop the drink and the tray on the floor. She's so disgusted. And then it's like, for the next 10 minutes, it's a slow transformation of just oozing, dripping. His head's turned into a weird thing. I don't know what the hell is happening to him. It was bizarre.
It looked like a cocoon, which nobody else had a fucking cocoon.
No.
And then they had to break through the cocoon to reveal the lizard pig that Louis Jourdan is now.
But it was like they put a Glad bag over his head. It was like an old trash bag. That's his cocoon that he's ripping his way out of. It was that. Well, you can always count when the actors are like, okay, I'm no longer working on this anymore. So it was like Louis Jourdan films a scene in the study with his ooze hand, and he's just like, okay, I'm done, right? Okay.
He was already on a plane.
He was already on the plane. I read somewhere in the behind the scenes that Ray Wise, who plays Alec Holland, we've seen him in 1,000 things. He was supposed to play the Swamp Thing.
Yeah, he doesn't play the Swamp Thing. He's in this movie for 5 minutes.
He's in this movie for 5 minutes because he's not a big, huge, hulking dude. So they're like, okay, stuntman, now you're Swamp Thing. I hope you can act.
And he does. He does a good job.
Yeah.
You feel sad for him.
You do. Even though, my God, his face cannot move. He cannot turn and look around.
But he had eyes. It was all emoting with the eyes.
It was all emoting with the eyes because it's like, how come the formula doesn't work? It only does what you do. It only helps you. What? Can you repeat that? It only does. How about you write it down? That was the other thing. It was like he goes to his old burned out laboratory to just pour like beakers into each other. It's been destroyed. Whatever you pour into this beaker isn't going to do anything anyway. But of course they break into his hand, like the beakers shatter because his hands are too swampy.
That's why we learned that he can never work in a lab again. So I don't know what he's going to do. He's just going to walk around the swamp for a couple of weeks till he kills himself.
Well, it's like
he's going to talk to the alligators.
Correct.
What the is he going to do?
That's all he's going to do. He's going to become the legendary skunk ape of South Florida. That's basically what. But it's like if you cannot control the strength of your hands. Like if I touch him, I'm going to smash him. How come he didn't accidentally murder Adrienne Barbeau carrying her around and copping a feel later, I might add?
He went to grab her boob and the whole boob just came away.
He did?
Sorry.
Well, when he's fighting the warthog man, she jumps up and like acts as a human shield for no reason, takes a sword right in the bosom and drops dead. Oh. And he goes up and he takes some weird moss from a tree, some lichen, and literally just puts it right on her boob.
Right on the boob. It was full boob coverage.
Full boob coverage. You expected her to be like, I'm dying, but move your goddamn hand. It's like,
you expected John Carpenter to be busting through on the scene at any minute.
Right. Not a John Carpenter film, shockingly enough.
But she was married to him at the time.
I believe that's true. Yes. So he could have No one's
You
going to cop a
sons of
feel.
bitches!
How dare you, Wes Craven? How dare you, Swamp Thing?
You've
Good
always
Lord.
wanted what was mine.
It's true. Whatever happens to Jude, by the way? I guess he's brought back to life by the touch of the slimy swamp hand.
Yeah.
But where does he? I guess he shows up and gives her a hug later. Oh, I'm fine. But he just lives in the swamp?
Yes, he goes back to live with where the crawdads sing. He goes back to live with Nell. He goes back to live with the swamp people.
It is absolutely where the crawdads sing. There's no question. Good Lord. One thing that I noticed is that because there's extended scenes of like swamp boats with machine guns chasing the Swamp Thing, shooting him. And it's constantly like, you're standing in your boat in the swamp. I'm just going to come up behind you and throw you in the swamp. That's what I'm, a swamp man. And it seemed like he targeted Bruno. Like there were multiple times where it's like 5 guys. He was like moving by them to grab poor Bruno and throw him into the swamp first.
Clearly, they only had enough time to train one person to fight with him.
Correct. Well, and the other thing is, I think he only kills one of the mercenaries. I don't think he kills any of the other ones. He throws in the swamp 15 times, but he doesn't, even though he's swampy. Go ahead.
Here's the question.
Please.
They have the sauce. They have the book. Why don't they just leave?
Because that's his house. He lives in the...
It's such a bizarre... Even if Adrienne Barbeau gets out, she starts talking about the swamp man, no one's going to believe her.
No one's going to believe her.
Peace out.
Well, who cares? You're right. It's bizarre. It's like evidently Anton Arcane, international criminal mastermind. He's like, but I live in the swamp. I just happen to live in the swamp. What can I? Is it an Airbnb? What is happening?
Like maybe he's like Cajun or something. Are we supposed to believe that? But the reality is, Swamp Man is not looking for him. He only comes out when they start messing with Adrienne.
Well, what is it? They're trying to get the last book. So the thing is, at the beginning of the movie, the sister, Alec Holland's sister, takes the books. Oh, God. So Louis Jourdan has got a gun pointed at the sister and says, give me the notebooks or I'll kill your sister. So Ray Wise is like, okay, Alec Holland, I'll get the notebooks. The sister's like, no, grabs the books and runs. So exactly. You're not outrunning a bullet. So she gets shot. Then, God help us. But somehow Adrienne Barbeau, she takes the crucial 7th notebook. Just coincidentally, it falls into her hands and she hides it. Why does she hide it? I mean, we don't want the secret formula of chlorophyll getting out. I don't know what this whole movie is just. It is nonstop insanity. So
I agree.
What else you got? Any other last thoughts and feelings?
I'm still confused why Louis Jourdan is a pig lizard. How
Correct.
is that? What part, besides turning him into a pig lizard, what did it exactly intensify in him?
His
the
evil.
one dude can bring people back from the dead. So with reverse, it made him a pig monster dum-dum. Is that what it is?
Right, you're right. When he becomes Swamp Thing, he's essentially immortal because they're shooting him with machine guns, throwing grenades at him, and he seems fine. When the one homie comes at him with the machete and chops his arm off, his arm grows back later.
He just needed a little bit of sunlight.
Just needed a little bit of sunlight.
That was kind of funny, like the little vine came out. Like,
well, they had him locked down in the dungeon because... I like it where he's like superhumanly strong, but like 4 guys fall on him. He's like, oh, I'm powerless. I'm powerless.
I need the sunlight.
I need the sunlight. But you're right. Louis Jourdan, he takes the formula because his attitude is like, but if you're genius, I don't know what accent I'm trying to do. If you're genius, then you'll be more genius. Exactly. Now he's from Bulgaria or something. Then you'll be more genius. Instead, he becomes a pig creature whose eyes do not move and the face does not. It's like a Halloween mask from
the eyes were a toilet paper roll cut in half with a ping pong ball in the end. It was like pre-Muppets.
Yes, it was Fraggle Rock. It was essentially what we were dealing with.
Down at Fraggle Rock.
Down at Fraggle Rock. Down at Fraggle Swamp.
It's the Fraggle that no one talks about.
Oh, poor Swampy. But what's interesting is, you don't know this. I assume you don't know this. I think 5 or 6 years later, there was a sequel called The Return of Swamp Thing. And do you know the only actor who returned for Return of Swamp Thing?
Adrian Barbeau.
No. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The guy who played Swamp Thing, he came back. What else is he going to do?
You mean the stuntman?
The actual actor, stuntman / actor who played Swamp Man. Right. I'm calling it Swamp Man. Came back for the sequel. But there was another actor who came back as well. Do you know who that was?
Is it the kid?
Louis Jourdan.
Oh.
He came back. Adrian Barbeau said
he lived to be 93. He was living his best life. He's like, give me some more money.
Give me some. He came back, and Adrian Barbeau's character, it was a new character played by Heather Locklear. So there you go.
Lord.
In theaters. This wasn't Full Moon Entertainment. This was in theaters. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So did her bayou boat break down and Swampy saved him?
Somehow.
I thought Louis Jourdan died at the end of Swamp Thing.
Right. At the end of this movie, he turns into a crazy mutant warthog, but somehow, and is killed by Swamp Thing. Somehow, in the course of these years, he not only is rejuvenated, he's no longer piggish. He's no longer pig-like or Javelina-ish. Okay, he's fine.
But
he's
still lizardy.
No, he's fine. No ounce of lizardism.
He's just like an older Frenchman.
He's just an older Frenchman. And Heather Locklear plays like his niece or his stepdaughter or something along those lines. So there you go. Good times.
Fascinating. My favorite part of the movie is the kids' boat had a weird voodoo doll at the front of the boat.
No explanation.
Like, where the hell? No explanation, but I was like, that was the best part. That was the best stage dressing of the entire thing, because I was like, what the hell is that? And how can I get it?
Yeah,
clearly
it was like
that
Serpent
will
in the
protect
Rainbow.
you from something.
Why not? Why not indeed? I don't think I have anything else. Do you have anything else?
I got nothing else.
Well, then why don't we go behind the scenes, shall we?
Let's.
We talked about this was directed by Wes Craven. It's funny because Wes Craven was unaware of the Swamp Thing, that it was a comic book, because growing up he had no access to comic books because they were forbidden by the church that he was raised in. So there you go.
So it just showed up as a script and no one mentioned it in the whole time?
They eventually mentioned it to him and discussed it with
Amish?
him. He was still, absolutely. They filmed this in the swamps of South Carolina. And it was fairly miserable because it was during a ferociously hot summer with very, very high humidity. And there was a black caterpillar plague. So that they were in the trees in big clumps and would drop down on you and sting you, is what Wes Craven said.
But so no one is sweating in this movie.
Strange. Well, it's hard to tell because they're all quite swampy. So who's to say?
Why would you choose to shoot during the summer?
Because that's when it was available. I don't know.
The swamp was otherwise booked?
It was otherwise busy. I don't know what to say.
God.
So you saw the brief nudity, topless, of Adrian Barbeau. There was actually a fully extended topless scene that was shot and intended only for use in the European markets.
Oh.
And and you can find it online if you're looking for it, as I have. Wes Craven talks about that it was one of those things that was just gratuitous breastness. So there he goes.
And Adrian said, cool.
When the DVD came out, they accidentally had the European cut, and people, so they tried to recall it. And they actually,
like, hell no, I'm not turning it back.
Right. Well, MGM contacted Barbeau and said check to see if she would just be cool with it being out there, and she said no.
Get it, you bastards.
Get it, you bastards. This movie came out in 1982, I believe, and this was during a particularly fallow period of Wes Craven's. He had done A Deadly Blessing in 1981, and he did this in 1982, and neither one was a hit. So he thought his career was over.
I remember people being into the swamp thing.
Wasn't a hit.
But am I right? Isn't it like a cult classic now?
I think that's probably true in retrospect. But at the time,
I remember renting it at the movie. Yeah, I rented it for sure. I didn't see this at the theater.
Absolutely. Well, he didn't do Nightmare on Elm Street for another 2 years, which basically saved his career. So there you go.
Well, that is the first Nightmare is the best.
The soundtrack was done by Harry Manfredini, who had done the soundtrack, the score, I should say, for Friday the 13th and Friday the 13th Part 2. So if you listen to it, it kind of has a Friday the 13th quality to it.
I knew that name sounded familiar, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, Wes Craven didn't work again for nearly 2 years after this film's release. And he was hard up for money. He had to borrow money from friends to pay his taxes that year. He had to sell his house, all sorts of stuff. Crazy. While making the film, they caught some grief from the guy that owned the limousine used for Arcane's chauffeur after he witnessed them fishtailing it in an effort to shoot a dramatic U-turn. He just totally flipped out. That was not in our contract. So there you go. Let's see. I think that's about it. More than any other actor, it was Louis Jourdan who wanted to go over every line of dialogue and make suggested changes. So
he's a professional, my friend.
He's a pro, for God's sakes. Let's talk about the cast and crew, shall we? Let's see. Written and directed by Wes Craven. You know him from such things as A Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, A New Nightmare in 1994, and of course, The People Under the Stairs in 1991.
Oh, the classics.
But of course, there's a million other movies we could mention. Serpent and the Rainbow he did. He did The Hills Have Eyes. He did Last House on the Left. The list goes on and on and on.
I've never seen that. I keep meaning to.
We should add it to the list at some point. It's very upsetting, though, they say. So there you go.
They say. But it's like 1980s upsetting or 1970s upsetting?
1972 upsetting. So there you go. Louis Jourdan played Arcane. You know him from such things as Octopussy in 1983. And if you don't watch Octopussy, you should watch it, if only to hear Louis Jourdan say multiple times, Octopussy, Octopussy. Very upsetting. He was
I love Louis Jourdan.
He was in Gigi in 1958.
Yes.
He was in The Paradigm Case in 1947 and Letter from an Unknown Woman in 1948.
He was very big in France.
He was very big in France. Although by the 80s, he was just write me a check. Which they all did, frankly. I always talk about Michael Caine. The 80s were rife with Michael Caine doing all sorts of crazy stuff.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrel.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
Rupert the Monkey Boy.
But he also did Blame It on Rio. He also did.
Saw that on the plane once.
Jaws the Revenge. There was no shame in his game. The Hand.
No.
Adrienne Barbeau, you know her from Escape from New York in 1981. Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield in 1986.
I do love Back to School.
Creep Show, which she did the same year as Swamp Thing in 1982. And she was Stevie Wayne in 1980's The Fog.
Yep. She's the queen of the horror.
Ray Wise played Dr. Alec Holland. You know him from such things as Batman the Killing Joke, animated, playing Commissioner Gordon. He was in Dead End in 2003. He was in Twin Peaks, Firewalk with Me, and of course the series Twin Peaks, playing Leland Palmer. He was Leon Nash in RoboCop in 1987. He's the world's hardest working man in show business.
Mm-hmm. But his work stopped in the 90s? Is that what I'm
He's still doing it. He was in Twin Peaks, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
David Hess played Ferret. He was the leader, the evil leader of the mercenaries.
Ferret.
He was in The Last House on the Left in 1972. He did the soundtrack for The Hateful Eight in 2015. I didn't know that. I guess he does a lot of soundtrack stuff. Soundtrack for Cabin Fever. And he was in something called Body Count in 1986. So there you go. Let's see. Anybody else we want to talk about in here? Dick Durock played the Swamp Thing when he was just the monster.
Which is 90% of the movie.
Which is 90% of the movie. You know him from Stand By Me in 1986. He played Bill Travis. He was Carl in The Enforcer, the Clint Eastwood movie in 1976. He was Swamp Thing in Swamp Thing. And he was uncredited fight guard in Runaway Train in 1985.
It's a fight guard.
I don't know. A guard who fights. Does that make
guard the fighters.
I think that's about it. Shall we go to the ratings?
Lay it on me.
Currently, Swamp Thing is rated 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. You know what the audience gave it?
74.
40.
Ooh.
Wah, wah, wah. Let's look at the top critics. Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times says, one of those movies that falls somewhere between buried treasures and guilty pleasures. 3 out of 4. Roger Ebert. He's a fan.
Because this is a review from the time.
No, 2004.
What the
He's a loose cannon sometimes. Vincent Canby says, from the New York Times, says the film wants desperately to be funny, and from time to time it is. However, you might wish it would trust the audience to discover the humor for itself. 2.5 out of 5 from Vincent Canby.
I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
What is your review for Swamp Thing?
I remember as a kid being very moved by their little relationship. And now I look at it and I'm so bored. But there were a few moments, but I just can't support it. I can't support it.
You can't support it.
I'm going to give it 2.75. I can't pee. I can't poop. I'm the Swamp Thing out of 5.
Well, the thing about their
I'm just going to fill up until I pop.
Which happens in the sequel, I think.
That's how they finally get rid of him.
His only weakness. The thing about their star-crossed lovers in this is they literally meet on a Tuesday. He's dead on a Wednesday. And now they're like, I've always loved you, Swampy.
I've always loved you in the whole 15 minutes that we've known each other.
I will now give up my life and live in a swamp with you. If only you'll have me. Right. Doesn't make any sense.
There was no offer like I can throw you in the back of the pickup truck and you can come live at my house. That was not an offer.
That is true. She does not say we can live in the city, Swampy. No, Swampy. That does not happen.
And I love you, Swampy.
No, none of that occurs.
I mean, he's more human in shape of water. He's more human than that thing.
Well, he talks. He has emotions. His brain seems to work.
Once again, versus having sex with a dolphin. Okay.
That's true.
So there you go.
That's true.
So she could have brought him home and stuck him in her bathtub.
Why not?
They did it for water because Adrienne Barbeau is clearly just a tease.
Could
This
be.
is all just a game. Just a
Could
game.
be. It's all just a game. 100%. No, the movie is fairly inoffensive. I think it's a PG movie. If I'm not, despite
No,
the,
she's got a boob sticking out. There's no
it's
PG
not a boob
boob.
sticking out. Look, I'll tell you
saw
right
a
now.
nipple.
There was no nipple.
Well,
PG.
is it just?
PG.
It was old PG.
Well,
Jaws was PG.
You're
It's
right.
An old PG.
It's still listed as a PG, though. You're right. But
Now
I
they
would
say no for nips.
But it's we didn't even talk about why she's topless. There's an unmotivated swamp bathing scene, which sounds like a bad idea, if I'm being honest. Right? I don't care how
100%.
dirty I think I am. I don't think bathing in the swamp's going to help. So, right.
Yeah. You don't have soap, so what are you exactly rubbing all over your tits? So I don't know.
You see from a distance, her back is turned, and she kind of gives you a 3/4 turn, so you see a little bit of a nipple, a little bit of one.
Men think women just scrub away at our boobs for hours. Got to get every bit of dirt off there. They're so dirty. Pillows, scrub them. Scrub
Dirty
them.
pillows, the dirty pillows. Anyway, I think I give it a 3. I think we're both kind of knocking on the same door. It's fine.
It has a right to exist.
It has a right to exist. I mean, like I said, it's fairly inoffensive. There's bizarre monsters fighting in the end, freakishly.
Yeah. If your 12-year-old would like to see a boob and monsters fighting, although I don't think it's fast enough for a 12-year-old,
Right.
I would recommend. But I think
Right.
once you get over 12, I mean, it depends on, are you showing your 6-year-old Saw? Maybe this isn't for them.
I thought I'd show it to my class.
If you have hey, I showed the original Class of the Titans, and all of a sudden at the beginning, there's a woman topless breastfeeding a child. I was like, oh, let me just get over and turn that off.
Shall we move on with our lives? Any last thoughts on Swamp Thing? Or is this it?
I never saw the Pardue, and I don't think I will unless I'm forced to.
I haven't seen it in ages. I remember it being campier. Like this, honestly, this doesn't seem very campy to me.
No.
I mean, I guess it's supposed to be has humorous moments, like when he's the little goblin running around. I guess is meant to be funny.
I thought that was because he was like, ah! I didn't think that was funny. I think they needed to lean forward one direction or the other. You could have made this scary, but you chose not to. You could have made it funny, also chose not to.
Well, it's, again, for a Wes Craven film, it's kind of shocking how kind of family friendly this movie is. Really. Going from
Kindler, Wes Craven.
It is. Well, going from
another
Last
time.
House on the Left to The Hills Have Eyes to Swamp Thing, you figure you're going to see some stuff, but you do not. Anywho, that being said, thank you very much. Go to our pages across social media. We're on X, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky for the time being. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. You may be watching us on YouTube this very moment, for goodness sakes.
For say.
You can also email us, the podcast that wouldn't die at Gmail.
Oh my God,
Keep
are you
hearing
having a stroke?
voices. Yes, I'm hearing voices constantly, so I have to stop and I
You're
don't know who's
being
talking to me.
punished.
Probably. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere the finer podcasts are available. So don't forget to like, share, do something. Help us out, for goodness sake.
Something.
Do something, for God's sakes. Aaron, what is your social media situation?
I'm just going to say that I am on the Instagram. I am the Cult of Aaron. Join the cult. I have some photography on First Dibs and Artsy. Instadreams Gallery. Boom.
Check it out. Do yourself a
Is that-
favor.
Do yourself a favor. Phone a friend.
Treat yourself. Treat yourself. Get something. As you know, we like to include comments, questions of our friends across the interwebs. Aaron, what do you got?
In regards to one of our earliest films, the Babadook. Remember the Babadook?
Absolutely.
Barbara Bottomsley called and said she agreed with me that all the graphics in it are amazing.
Old Barbara Bottomsley. I appreciate she's been with us from the beginning, so I appreciate
And
her
one of
thoughts
our
feelings.
frequent people, Fester Trim, called in and is demanding that we do It's Alive 3.
Wah, wah.
Island of the Alive. I
Next
explained
week-
that you're
Oh, here it
withholding.
keep going. Next week, we'll be discussing the horror mystery. I don't know what it is. I'm thinking of ending things. Only on Netflix.
Dude,
So
what do
check
you mean
that
you
out.
don't know? We read it for book club.
I know, but I don't know what genre it is. Just nonsense. But we'll find out
I
how it
googled
translates.
random horror shit that people are watching.
So we'll see how it translates going from the page to the Netflix screen.
Well,
So
especially since we thought the book was kind of so-so. So this will be fun. It's got an 82 on Rotten Tomatoes, so let's see.
It's always good when we say like, hey, this book kind of sucked. Did they make a movie?
They
Anyway,
always do. They
always
always do.
so send in your favorite scenes, favorite quotes, comments, and questions, and maybe we'll talk about it on the show. So thank you very much, and be well.
Be well, my friends.